Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3-Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry, and all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all worked for all the major publishers in the business. Together, we've published somewhere around 75 children's books, and we've all taught illustration at university art programs.
That is right. Each week we come at you guys with fantastic illustrator interviews or listener questions like you may have. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we argue, but each time you learn something brand spanking new.
Brand spanking new. I just remembered something that I wanted to talk about, and that is really quick. In August, we're launching our second round of Self-Publishing Pro, and we are opening up the sort of pre-order, save your spot here in June. So go to selfpublishingpro.com to kind of get on that email waiting list, and let's have you guys join us for Self-Publishing Pro. If you are watching this on YouTube and you were one of the students who took the last Self-Publishing Pro, in the comments, just mention, what you thought of the class and what you learned from it. And that'd be really, I think, helpful for people wondering if they should take this or not. But if you've ever wanted to self-publish and you've ever wanted to sort of own the thing that you're creating 100% and have that direct connection between the thing that you're creating and the audience that appreciates it, self-publishing is the way to go. The three of us are combined. How many years experience on doing self-publishing?
About
4,000.
4,000 years
I was
experience. A little low. All coming at you in a fire hose of information for 9 weeks straight, and you're gonna learn everything you need to know about self-publishing. So do check that out, sign up for it, see if it's right for you. All right. First things first, Lee, did you have a money tip today?
I do have a money tip.
Let's hear the jingle.
All right, here we go. I need to make this up on this because it's got to be specific. No. Okay, here we go.
It's Lee's
money tips. If you ain't what you is what you ain't.
Okay. I want to see where this goes. I'm really curious.
All right. This money tip has to do a little bit with branding. Both Will and I are launching products within the next year, and we have both been involved with a service that sort of helps you prepare for that launch. It's called Launch Boom. I'm not here to promote that in any way, but it's going through the process is really interesting, and I sort of want to share one of the things that I've learned along the way, and that is sort of backing up and branding yourself, understanding what your unique thing to offer is. And it's easy just to be all day, I just need to draw something. I just need to paint something. And then if you do that, then you're moving yourself forward, when really you're sort of just treading water if you're doing that. And so one of the things we have to do with this service to get your product ready to go is to kind of list out the features of the thing that you're making, whether it's a game or a book or whatever it is. And you have to be specific. You can't just be generic, I'm doing a great book and look how pretty it is. I mean, that's just so generic. Or I'm doing a tarot deck. Well, what's the difference of my tarot deck? And just by having to dive in and really explain what makes this tarot deck different. So I had to come up with basically 4 sort of features and talk about each one of those features and why it's different, why the storytelling is different. One of mine might be classic storytelling with a twist. And so I'm taking classic themes within a tarot deck and adding a twist, adding my own twist to it. And well, what kind of twist is that? It's kind of this playful, whimsical style that is building on imagery that people in tarot already know. And so that becomes a feature, but I didn't really know that. I didn't know it enough to talk about it in an intelligent way or to list it as a product feature. What kind of quality am I putting into the materials? And so how do you say that in an interesting way? And why are these materials better than other materials? And so I guess my point is, let's just stop. We talk about making things and building sort of your business. And I guess my pitch is really back up and say, who are you? Who's the market you're creating for? what's your unique competitive advantage over other people? Like, why should I look at your work over anyone else's? And if you can answer that question, all of a sudden your work can become elevated, in my opinion. And the last part of that is when you really back up and say, okay, I'm going to do this as a business. You really do have to focus on one thing, and it can't be everything. Like I was trying to put together this urban sketching class and trip and all that, and I still want to do it. But I realized in order for me to launch this product, I have to go all in on the advertising, all in on the artwork, all in on what the cover looks like and placing it in the right spots for ads and all that stuff, how I present it on social media. It cannot be me just drawing a sketch to fill up a sketchbook or to post on social media. And so understanding who you are and understanding who you're selling to and what that product is going to move you forward in the quickest, straightest line, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
Well, it's like you said, if you aren't what you is what you ain't.
Is that a thing? Yeah, sure.
No, yeah, you're speaking my language. Like, that really is like, it's the thing that divides. It's the thing that divides like great companies from like memorable companies is like being so dialed in and knowing exactly what they are. And I always go back to like Liquid Death, right? All they do is sell water. Just a company that sells water, but how do you compete with Coca-Cola, who's selling water, with Avion, with Arrowhead, with I don't know, what are the other big water company brands, whatever. How do you go and set yourself apart from all of them? What makes you different? And Liquid Death says, we're going to put it in a beer can. We're going to make it look punk and hardcore. And we're going to get kids to, skater kids to want to drink water instead of power drinks, and they've been successful because of that. Right. And so I always try to like, how to Liquid Deathify your brand, like what you're doing as an artist. How do you stand out from everybody? Because if you, like you said, Lee, if you aren't specific, if you aren't niche, then you're nothing. You just blend in with everybody else.
Yep.
I was thinking too, like, did you ever go through phases where you think that maybe your style is dated and that you don't have enough, like you're not staying trendy enough, and you could see, like, I've watched styles come and go. I watched Cartoon Network do SpongeBob, and then, or I guess it was Nickelodeon do SpongeBob, and that being like the style, which was sort of like an evolution of like the 90s Cartoon Network with the Powerpuff Girls and with the kid scientists. I forget his name now. Dexter's Laboratory, kid scientist. If you're not Dexter Laboratory, you're just kid scientists, but you could be Jimmy Neutron or you could be Dexter's Laboratory or whatever. But then you watch that style go to the Cartoon Network era, right? I mean, not the Cartoon Network era of like the 2000s where it's like Adventure Time, right? And that becomes the style. And now it's this, is the style shifting again? And where have I been this whole time? And what's my style been? And I'm always like a Bill Watterson knockoff is what I feel like, right? But
well, the good thing is that's a sort of a classic blend. It's hard to describe, and I think that's where the danger comes with style chasing. Is that if you're ripping off like another era, like for example, all the people that did the sort of the 50s modern, right? That's what you're talking about, is that 50s modern kind
style,
of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they went all in on it. I mean, there's a couple of illustrators that I can think of that really went all in, and that was just their style. And that's what I would, it's the clock is ticking from the moment you do that. If I were to go back in all 70s kind of illustration, or, it's the clock is ticking if you're doing something like that.
But I mean, I think styles like come and go, but also there can be a timelessness once enough time has passed, right? So that mid-century modern really had like it was in style when it was fresh. Then it went out of style as, taste changed. And then it came back in style. And I kind of feel at some point you can sort of just be the guy who does that. And if people need that, they know where to get you, because every once in a while someone's going to need that particular thing, right? So it's a balancing act. I don't know. What do you think, Will?
I don't have much to offer on this one. I don't know why I'm like.
Will found his style.
Will Rams just running into the grave with it.
I had early on, I had a couple of reps that tried to change me. And they're like, this is more popular. This is more what you should do. And I tried to chase a little bit, and it didn't feel like me. It wasn't fun.
Yeah.
And I started thinking, if the danger here is if this is what people start hiring me to do, then I don't want to do it. So I just basically have always leaned into what feels right, and I don't chase style. And eventually people will probably end up not liking what I do, and I'm fine with that. Like, as long as I like
the people who are at more of a danger of that. I mean, what you're saying is basically you were comfortable enough with what you liked and what you wanted to do, and that you knew how to do it, that you didn't need to chase it. I think early on, that's the time where that's the danger, where you're not comfortable with yourself. You don't have a style all of a sudden. A style takes a long time to really evolve into, I guess. And so early, like Lisa and I, my wife and I, were talking about my graduating portfolio, and man, it was so heavily influenced by a couple of illustrators that it wasn't me at all. I thought it was cool, what they were doing, and I was mimicking it.
Yeah.
It was pretty blatant when I look back on it. And it was just where I was at the time. But I don't think you can be there long, because your natural tendencies always win out in the end. It's hard to fight against that.
Right. And eventually you got to get to a point where you can draw a cat without looking at reference, and it looks like a cat that you drew, that only you could draw, and that's hard. It takes a lot of work and a lot of figuring out to, like, how does Lee White draw a cat versus Will draws a cat versus Jake draws a cat. But I guarantee if we all drew a cat, none of our cats would look anything like each other.
Right. Will's would look like a beach ball with ears.
Yeah.
Round, start with a circle.
With some really amazing, like, rim light happening right on that edge.
Rim light, cool light coming from the back lighting somehow.
Yeah.
Jake's would have 3 artificial legs.
Right. It'd be a robot, half
Mine
robot
would be
cat.
in a blimp. So, you got to figure out.
You got to
figure out your cat. You figure out your style. That's what I'm to say about that. Let's do some questions.
I have done, by the way, on cats. I've been working on an illustration where I've literally drawn like 5 or 6 different cats, and I was sure, like, okay, now I got it. Okay, no, that's no good. Okay, now I got it. Okay, no, that's not. And I don't know what it is. Sometimes I can nail cats and get it the Will Terry way, and sometimes it's just elusive.
Yeah.
Cats. I have a little side story. Speaking of something I just said, it kind of prompted this little memory. One of this is sort of funny. So I taught a couple of freshman level classes, a couple of sophomore, junior, and then senior classes, right? And so I had students that were going all through the different stages of that. And one of my late sophomore or early junior classes at a school that focuses only on art, in class, they're in a concept art class. So they've already gone through the entire foundation. They've already gone through all of the freshman stuff and some of the sophomore stuff. My midterm final that I gave people was a red and white beach ball just on a flat white surface.
Okay.
That's it. And it was amazing. I'd probably have, maybe out of a class of 20, I'd maybe have 3 people who could paint a convincing beach ball.
Really?
It's harder than you think. If you guys want to give yourself a little test, the listeners at home, try to do a beach ball, from without even really looking at reference. It should be easy enough. Red and white beach ball, you know what I'm talking about. Stripes, maybe there's 3 or 4 red stripes on it or whatever.
Mhm.
Lit, studio kind of lighting. It was interesting. And we would always have to take a step back after that because people were like, "Oh, I thought I could paint." They're hiding the lack of skills with being overly complicated in a scene or
Mhm.
trying to hide it with the design or whatever. But there's nowhere to hide if it's a beach ball. It's just a circular. Do you know how to use the program well enough to even control these shapes? I challenge you guys. Do it. It's harder than you might think.
Okay. Challenge accepted. Challenge accepted. All right. Questions today. We've got one from Tanya. Tanya? Subject, transitioning to book publishing. Hi, I'm an illustrator who's mostly worked in editorial and advertising, but I've always loved narrative and books. So I'm now trying to make the transitions to children's publishing. I'm making some specific personal work in this area to try to get attention to some literary agents. How far do you see my portfolio, or how do you see my portfolio going? Do you think my work could be fitting for a children's book, even if it's a bit more graphic? So let's pull it up and see what you guys think. Okay, so I look at this. This is some stuff that she's making for personal work for specifically to children's books. And what's cool is you look at this compared to where's her editorial and poster advertising. So she's really got this she's got the sort of contemporary editorial look like figured out, where it's a little bit of her own, like she's got her twist to it, but it is what's it called, corporate sort of corporate style illustration stuff you would see on a very formal corporate website. Click on the HR button and then you would see like two people sitting at a desk, and their proportions are sort
Right.
of
I mean, that
elongated.
balloon one is a perfect example of that. Like,
Yeah.
it's
I
like
knew Lee was going to be tempted.
we
by the
all work
balloon.
together. Yeah, into the balloon.
Yep.
But it's class. It does kind of highlight that look. She's really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
You guys ever want to get Lee's attention for anything? Send a balloon, a hot air balloon illustration.
That is not true. Although it's true. It's
It
true.
was funny when you were on vacation and you texted the picture from the back.
I thought you guys would like that
porch of the cabin, and it looks like a Lee White painting. It's these mountains, these beautiful pine trees, and then there's just hot air balloons just floating by.
Yeah, that was a nice little happenstance. We're sitting on the front porch having coffee on my
There's a
vacation,
dog
overlooking
chasing
this
the hot air
lake.
balloon.
And all these hot air balloons start right now because they do tourism, like balloon tours or whatever. And so every morning that happened. I thought it was like just a
rabbit
thing.
riding a bicycle.
That's pretty cool. All right, so back to the matter at hand. When I see what she's doing, how she's applying this to children's books, heck yeah, man, this is
that's great.
This would be awesome. Imagine these fully colored, especially if they're going to have like this more painted gouache texture to it. I'd say she's going in the right direction.
You know what I'm the most happy about looking at these is that we always, somebody always writes in and then we were like, oh, your storytelling's not good enough, or you're not painting's not there yet. This
That's what we
person
say
is
to
like,
them.
all they have to basically do is make an image for that market and they'll get work. I mean, like this person's as good as it gets, especially for this style. They'll have no problem transitioning.
Yeah.
It already looks good. The color palette is fantastic. It's really probably accessible to kids, especially with the soft kind of shapes and the way that that she draws. And so just 1-to-1 right in the market. I think she should definitely do it. No problem. No changes.
Well, this is a good example of what we were talking about earlier, where what's your brand? What's your style? How do you separate yourself from others? It's one thing to just make make what you think the market wants. It's another thing to sort of have your own style, but also have it be something the market wants. I think that's what's going on here, which is pretty cool.
It's nice.
Really nice. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So no advice to there other than go full gas and get that going. Okay, next question. This is Franziska. And the subject is, what do I do with my finished beginner projects? And I wanted to throw this one in there because it's a question even I have sometimes. What do you do with projects that really, they're not up to the level that you are now? So what do you do with them? Do they just
throw them away?
Or is there any reason to share them, right? So I'll just give some specifics here. Third-year design and illustration student from Germany. I want to work towards setting myself up for a career in illustration after I finish art school. During school and during the holidays, I have finished quite a few bigger projects, but I haven't really done anything with them except put parts of them on my website. I'm quite proud of some of these projects, but I don't know if it's smart to try and market them in some way since I'm still a beginner. Uploading the full comics or illustrated books to my websites or social media somehow doesn't feel right either. Could I send them out to editors or publishers to introduce myself and say I would love to work with them for some future projects? Do I just keep them in my portfolio to show that I've done some projects but move on to try and prove myself? Do I sell them for a small amount as downloadable PDFs or give them out in exchange for an email newsletter subscription like Jake suggests oftentimes? Or do I keep physical copies and sell them on art markets when I get the chance? Lots of options here.
Yeah.
So
as far
go ahead.
Well, as far as sending them out to get more work, if they're not your best work, if you're now better than that, I wouldn't do that. Like, you should only be sending out your very best work.
I think this person looking at the portfolio is in a great place for student work. They're exploring style and they're doing it well. They're exploring different mark making techniques and different levels of abstraction in illustration, different levels of cartoony versus realism. They are not ready to send this thing out. I would keep it on the back burner and just keep it on the website if it holds up for sort of what you want to do, and then replace as necessary. I don't see any need to. I think you got to resist the urge to show all your cards now. And I think too many people do that too early. You get one shot at a first impression. I mean, that's an old corny saying, but I think it's true. And if you send it saying, hey, I'm a student now, but I hope to see you in 3 years when I'm good. Well, they're going to remember you when you were bad. I just think your first meeting with an art director or editor should be, hey, I'm a pro. I've studied for years and I'm ready.
Yeah. The thing I do love, though, is that this person's thinking in projects. They're not just putting together random illustrations.
Right.
But you can click on the illustration section of their website and sort of has an aggregate of all the different projects in one place. But if you go to the projects, that's actually more impressive to see these things together as a thing. Because this is like, this sometimes is harder to train a person in than just make an illustration.
I
but
agree.
can you see a project through start to finish? Can it be cohesive? Can you actually finish a thing, right? Instead of just having 5, half finished projects that you're kind of bouncing around between. So all of this points to, if they're third year and they've got one more year, that last year should be like, okay, whatever your school assignments are, shoehorn them into the next project that you want to do so that you have a finished project that you can, have it be like a professional level portfolio piece to share with people.
Again, really, really solid work. I'm loving this book called The Magic Shop. Love that. I'm liking this like kind of printmaking style they have. It's really unique. They may want to lean into it because I've seen 100 illustrations like The Tempest. That's more of a vector art almost style, filled in color. But those 2 printmaking projects are super sweet.
Yeah, The Magic Shop's nice. There's some nice things there.
This artist is from, where would you say this artist is from?
Germany.
I would buy that book, The Magic Shop. It looks so cool.
Which one is it?
It's the third one down called The Magic Shop.
Yeah. Well, I don't read German. Do you have it translated to English?
There's Zaberladen.
I guess I do. I mean, it
says Der Zaberladen.
That's the Zauberland.
The magic shop.
I know
And,
der is
the German word for sketchbook is Schismbuch or Schismbuch. I don't know.
Do you know how to say a pencil in Germany?
How do you say it?
Ein Bleistift.
In Bleistift.
Mm-hmm.
I do know, like, you can tell a lot about a culture by how they say the word butterfly. And so, like, in English, it's obviously butterfly. In Spanish, it's mariposa, right? And then in German, it's Schmetterling, right? So, I don't know. I just always thought that was funny.
Everybody, I've noticed that every other language has better words than we do for stuff like dragonfly, the lebula. That sounds so cool. Dragonfly.
Yeah.
Boring.
Dragonfly.
This is a typical
Northeastern accent.
Right. All right, Franziska, well on your way. Keep going with those. But again, I wouldn't like this. She's still at a student level, right? Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't be sharing these particular projects with potential. Like, would you tell her to take them off her website?
Not yet. I think replace is necessary. I mean, I think she's got one more year, like you said, senior year level stuff of fine tuning, figure out which style is going to be the one, and maybe curate it a little bit to. Because right now, I think an art director would sort of not know what they're going to get, but this person, oh man, I think they're going to be successful.
How do you guys know when, like Jake, like for instance, you have the Antler Boy, right?
Yeah.
That's what, 10 years old or 12 years old or
20
years old.
Well, I mean, some of the stories I did back in 2002,
30 years old.
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay. But at what point do you still have Antler Boy books, right?
No, I haven't reprinted it, but I have it as a PDF download on my website.
I guess what I'm going to ask is, how do you stop promoting a project? Like, what makes you decide to stop pushing it?
Yeah. When does it run its course?
Yeah.
Essentially. I mean, it all comes down to bandwidth for me. It's like, I have new stuff that I want to promote. And so, yes, projects, I don't really, like fully archive projects. Like the way I have my website built is you could pretty much find a lot of stuff that I've worked on if you dig around enough in it. And like, and so I'm not necessarily like promoting them and saying, hey, come look at this thing, but it's there if people find them, if they dig around. Really, my bandwidth is, let's promote the newest, best thing. And if people like that, eventually they'll filter their way down to, older archived stuff.
That's me too. Are you, now let me ask you this. This has turned into me interviewing Jake.
Let's hear it.
Or you, Lee, as well. But like, if you had a project that made over $250,000, and it was showing signs of like a lot of life, like a lot of demand, would you stop? Would you ever get to a point where you'd stop making new stuff? Let's say it was $500,000 on like your last book, your robots book, right?
And what if I just get sick of doing robots and I want to do something new, but there's so much money on the table for
and then there's so much there, so much demand. There's maybe there's opportunities to speak and to make appearances and to promote it in different places, and you have maybe maybe a publisher's grabbed a hold of it and they want you to do a bunch of stuff for it.
That's the Guns N' Roses business model, right? They had the one album and then that's all they did.
It was Guns N' Roses that started out as like just hey, what if we tried this? Yeah. and then it got successful, and they're like, I guess we'll keep doing this.
They just did the one album, and that's all they still got known for. They never released really another one. I think there's merit to that, actually. I mean, what I'm seeing more, it kind of goes back to what I was talking about in my money tip. I'm seeing some people that have online classes. We have a ton of online classes that we built. couple of people have only built one class and they just keep running it. And they're not trying to make a new class or a new version of it. They just continually improve the class, and they've made a fortune from it by leaning into that one product. So, I mean, I would be bored with just doing that. I think I would always have to make something new. But if something was commercially successful and you sort of, what you're saying is you made making a whole brand out of it, right? And just leaning into it, and that's your sole source of income. Heck yeah, man. If I could do that.
I would, what you're telling me is, hey, you have a revenue stream that is consistent, and it will live as long as you put, give it
effort into it. Yeah.
It has inertia, and it'll keep going as long as you
Right.
keep applying a little bit of gas to it from here and there. I hear that and I think awesome, because that is sort of a freedom engine, because it frees me up to explore and to try other things. And I think you can essentially carve out, 80% of your time is spent on the main thing, but carve out 20% of your time for research and development, for exploring, for doing new projects and whatnot.
Hey, Jake, with your antler boy, did you see, what's the show on Netflix? Sweet Tooth?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You going to sue them for copyright infringement?
No, everybody's sort of just drinking from the same well water. That's what's going on there. Like, I remember there's like a children's book that came out in the 60s, I think, where a kid, parts of his body start turning into, like, he gets duck flippers. He gets
Which,
antlers.
what, who? It's
what?
which, what, who?
Yeah, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, and so some could say that I ripped that off, by giving a kid antlers. And I know Antler Boy came out around the time Sweet Tooth. I don't know when Sweet Tooth came. It was a comic first. But whatever. There's Star Trek, there's Star Wars, there's hey, you have a star in your name. what is it? I think people are going to be drawn towards the thing that they love. The thing that I've had, I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable here, but the thing that I've had a little bit of, not angst, but like just a little bit of like sad frustration was the year. So I did not the Antler Boy. I did Little Bot and Sparrow, right? Mm-hmm. That was a comic that came out in Flight, the Flight anthology back in 2004, I believe. Mm-hmm. And it was like maybe the greatest little short story I ever drew. It was about this robot that gets tossed, somehow ends up in the middle of the woods. Nobody loves it, except he makes friends with this little sparrow, and they have this bonding. And then the sparrow has to leave because winter's coming, and it's about separation and how the robot deals with being separated from his friend. And I love that story, and I always thought it'd be a great children's book. So eventually I got to the place where I was doing children's books, and I had put together this proposal, and year after year, we're modifying it and sending it out. And finally Roaring Brook Press says, yes, let's do this. Let's do a children's book. So I make Little Bot and Sparrow, the children's book, and it comes out the same year as The Wild Robot comes out. And The Wild Robot is by Peter Brown. It's about this robot. It's like a kid's novel. It's about a robot that ends up in the woods, crashes into the woods, makes friends with a goose or an animal, makes friends with the wood animals. And there's a lot of like covering the same thread. And my Little Bot and Sparrow book was well received, got good reviews, didn't sell great, kind of sort of was what it was. But this other robot book goes on to have huge success. It turns into a trilogy of books. There's 3 of them now. DreamWorks acquires it, and now DreamWorks is coming out this year with the Wild Robot movie, and it looks amazing, and I want to see it, and it looks awesome. But part of me is just like, that's what I wanted for Little Bot and Sparrow. I wanted it to be a second book and a third book and a movie and little bot toys and everything. And what I have to realize is Peter Brown executed way better than I did.
Do you think
a much better job?
I have a little bit different takeaway there, and that is our careers would be better without Peter Brown in the world. Because I wrote a story about turnips, and that was the year that he did the carrots. So somehow
creepy
this
carrots.
evil Peter Brown is one step ahead of us.
For real, man. That would explain why my sketchbooks keep going missing for days at a time.
That's
They're
right.
back
Somehow
on my
Peter
desk.
Brown. Should we make a comic where Peter Brown is the villain?
He'd probably turn that into a great book, and it'd be a movie in a few years.
He'd write it to millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Oh, Peter Brown.
Anyway, so
I didn't
go
realize
see
those were
Wild
at the same
Robot, and
time.
while you're there in the movie theater, just toast your Diet Coke or whatever you're drinking to Little Bot and Sparrow, and just say what could have been.
And my turnip book. Please say a
Yes.
little prayer for my turnip book.
Raise a glass. How do we get on this?
I don't know.
What were we even talking about? Are we
really-
recording a podcast? I forgot.
I don't know what we were talking about.
Next question. This comes from a person who shall remain nameless. I'm so glad I saw the they did not release their
No
name for
can
us.
do.
No can do. Okay, so the question is to share or not to share. Hi guys, I love the podcast and everything else you do. Thanks for, all the inspiration and the confidence and everything. So we're happy to help you, provide you with that. So the question though is, since deciding to give illustration a real go during the pandemic, I've illustrated 3 books and I've recently reached out to a few agents. I included some personal work as well as illustrations from 2 of my published books in my portfolio, but I think some of my best work was done in my 3rd as yet unpublished book, which I didn't include in the portfolio. This week, I got my first rejection letter from an agent, and I can't help but think it's because I'm not showing off my best work. I want to include these images in the portfolio, but it feels wrong to share them publicly when the book hasn't been published. However, my contract doesn't say anything about not sharing, and I submitted my last illustration in July of last year and still no book. So these illustrations have been sort of wrapped up for a year, and he doesn't feel like he could share them publicly, and he feels like that's hurting his chances to get an agent. So the question is, should I include the images in my portfolio, even though the contract really doesn't state whether he can or not? Or should I stop looking for excuses?
Who's the contract with? I'm a little confused.
What do you mean? The publisher?
Wait, are they saying that the book is being published? I don't see that. It
Yeah,
says
the
I got
book
my
is
first
being
rejection.
published, but they finished the illustrations a year ago, and they're trying to get an agent. They want to know if they can share the illustrations even though the book hasn't been published yet.
I would share them privately.
Right.
I think you can in an email, if you're going to share it with a specific client or potential client, you could do it privately.
I would
and
also
say that-
ask, it never hurts to ask the publisher. I don't see why any press for an upcoming project would be turned down. Maybe you don't want to show everything, but can you show a abbreviated version of an illustration or a close-up, a detail, a process sketch? Can you, that kind of stuff is what I would be interested in.
Yeah, this is banking on that just people randomly are stopping by your portfolio, right? And you're hoping to win the agent lottery. I think it's perfectly fine to submit something to an agent. Here's the password. This hasn't been published yet, but I just want you to see what my current skill level is and what this project is, because agents sort of understand everything that's going on behind the scenes anyway. They know which publisher has fired somebody, and they know who's getting promoted and what their tastes are and whether they should be submitting to them right now or wait a year when that person moves to another publishing house. They know all the inner workings. So for them to see a book that hasn't been published yet, it's no big deal because they're professionals and they're not going to,
Right.
they're not going to share it, right? So I think you're fine sharing that, password protected. Just say, hey, here's the secret part of my portfolio. I know I do that in getting animation work, where there's NDA stuff, that projects that will never see the light of day because they got canceled, but yet the NDA states that I can't share them, right? Because they're the company's property. But I have them in a little private section so that when I am sharing my portfolio with other companies, I can say, here's the password protected section so you can see what I've sort of been working on. And again, everyone's sort of everyone's professional. They're not gonna take those images and say, look what's been leaked of this canceled project from
Right.
Disney or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the answer to that question. I think that's it for today.
Nice.
Yeah.
Pretty good
Should we
stuff.
wrap it up?
Yeah, I want to do one little shout out before we do that. We're going to do on Thursday. This will probably have already happened by the time you guys hear this podcast, but we're doing the How to Fix Your Art session, and we have these different prompts on our website. And all three of us were kind of just talking about them and looking at them before the podcast started today. And it's a good group. I mean, like the quality is all of a sudden going through the roof. The concept this time was, what was it with the Godzilla?
Godzilla, the children's book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so
it all comes down to how, what the prompt is. I think
Yeah.
that's what happens.
people
when we get-
knocked it out of the park with this children's book version of Godzilla. It's awesome.
Yeah. So if this drops after that, they can watch it on YouTube, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On
So
School of Visual
this How to Fix Your Art's going to be tomorrow. This episode drops next Tuesday.
That's what I mean. But if you're hearing this on the episode, just go to School of Visual Storytelling and you can just watch it there.
Very good. That's good.
How
All
can
right,
they
now-
participate
Well, how can they participate? Will you
in
tell
next
us?
month's challenge?
What
What
is
is
it?
next
simply
month's
go-
challenge? Can we go ahead and throw that out there?
Yeah, just go to svslearn.com.
Next month's is about a food truck, right?
What's that?
It's a food truck, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a food truck. So if you go there at the top of the bar, at the top of the navigation, you just hit art prompts and you can see the current prompt and upcoming prompts. So currently in July, people are now working on this prompt, and it goes like this. It was a food truck like no other, and her customers loved it. And what we try to do in How to Fix Your Art is we try to help our students learn not only to be good illustrators and to communicate visually through their illustration, but also to further the story. And we really focus a lot on telling good stories, interesting stories, stories that move the viewer emotionally. And we're not as so much interested in just illustrating, like for instance, on this one, just a food truck where customers are just enjoying eating food. That would be kind of a boring, right? I mean, like, so we want you to come up with
a beautifully illustrated drawing of people eating food at a food truck for us to like really be excited about it.
Let me ask you guys. Do you know off the top of your head what you would do for this prompt?
I do. I would do I would make it I'd go into the opposite world and say, the food was terrible, right? And people are having a food fight and like demanding their money back outside.
Yeah.
I would go with a bird. I would go like a birdhouse route or some kind of alternate place for the food truck. Because that would be really interesting, is to have like, what kind of little food truck would these kind of anthropomorphic birds have?
Would it be
would
suspended
be-
from a hot air balloon, Lee?
I mean, that's not a bad idea. A hot air
could.
balloon food.
And then
like
the birds
it.
are like coming and visiting.
See, it
Yeah.
works for all concepts.
Well, and so do robots. So I would do a food truck mech, right?
Yep.
And it's a food truck. So let's say you're hiking, the Uintas or something. You're backcountry and you're just dying for an awesome egg sandwich or something for breakfast. Well, there's trudging up the mountain.
I love
It's a
that.
Walker food truck mech, and it's there serving hikers out in the backwoods.
I want to. So we have 11 days, right? We want to do this assignment. That sounds like so much fun when you really start thinking alternatively about how to solve these problems.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see what people come up with, what happens. I also want to point out how short our episodes are when we don't go ranting on stuff.
Are we? Is it short?
Yeah, we're about 15 minutes shy of what we usually do.
Should we do a rant, each one of us?
No, I think we're fine.
I don't know, man. I'm feeling ranty.
People need to get on with their day. So I'll wrap it up. And thank you for joining us today. 3-Point Perspectives made possible by SVSLearn. We're becoming a great illustrator starts again. Join us this in August for Self-Publishing Pro. Go check out Self-Publishing Pro and get on the email list there to be notified when you can start enrolling in that course. Your host for this podcast are Will Terry, Lee White, and I'm Jake Parker. Podcast produced by Daniel Tu. That's Daniel TU. Special thanks to our keeper of the curriculum, Austin Shirtliff, our wrangler, Lily Howell, and our chief operations officer, Lisa Fott. Special thanks to our illustrator, Annalise Black. Now, go draw something.